Right, hello and welcome back to the channel, back to Baldwin Sports Media on what is the start of Super Bowl week. We finally made it. Still a couple of days to go, obviously, but the fact that we're in the week of the Super Bowl after a couple of days without football, and I know some of you like the Pro Bowl, as we discussed last week. I'm okay with the Pro Bowl, but it's not quite the same as it has been in the past few seasons. So I can understand why some people don't really see it as the fix or the whatever they need to get through to actual football. But yep, we're here. We've still got a couple of days, but that doesn't mean that we are short of any storylines. And sorry, I didn't have it written on my phone. Today I just had to have a couple of issues with it, so I wasn't getting it. But we will be talking about Super Bowl news, and we may as well start with may as well get into it. Super Bowl news. So, where should we start first? We'll start with the playing conditions. Now, last year we had the issue between the Chiefs and the Eagles where the players were not particularly happy. And you saw it if you watched the game that they were not happy with the playing conditions. There was, I think, it was something to do with the paint that they used at State Farm Stadium down in Arizona to play the game, and it was causing a lot of footing issues. Again, if anyone saw the game, you will know just the amount of problems that the teams had. And we've got similar conditions this year, except it's just for one team, or at least one team that we know, and that is, according to report, the San Francisco 49ers practice facility at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas. They had some new sod put in into preparation for the game, and apparently it is causing a couple of the players problems. Um, yeah, it's pretty much as simple as that. As Adam Schefter said on the Pat McAfee show, as he said, they put a new layer of salt in. So this isn't necessarily a UNLV issue. This is, as he sort of put it, a innocent bystander in the situation. But it is still something that the 49ers are going to have to deal with. Now, as I explained to this on my TikTok earlier about this, I don't think it's going to be it shouldn't be a big issue. I can't see Kyle Shanahan. Maybe he'll sort of mention it during his press conferences during the week, but in terms of the actual, um, in terms of the actual performance and on game day, if they were to lose and he's in the press conference afterwards, I don't see him being able to bring up and say, "Oh, we would have had them. We would have been. It was a close game or whatever. We would have had them if we'd have had better facilities to try." I don't see it being that big of an issue. I can only really see it being something that maybe the fans would want to bring up again. Coaches and players, they'll say, "Oh, it's schematics," or they were just the better team, or whatever. Fans will have their reason to say, "Oh, this was down to the NFL. Why were the Chiefs getting favorable facility, or why was ours not better?" And I can kind of understand that, because you want, on a big occasion like this, everything to be perfect. Again, everything's not going to be exactly perfect. As we saw last year, they did their best to try and get it in a reasonable condition, but they just couldn't get it done. And we had I was going to say a less than entertaining, but it was still an entertaining game, but still issues with the field. And now we've got it, this year as well. So with the NFL being a multi-billion-dollar industry, this isn't just what it's worth, this is what it brings in every year, multiple billions of dollars in one way or another. You would imagine that they would have better facilities, or again, perfect facilities for the teams to get ready and practice out. And again, bringing it in from last year as well, the fact that we had inadequate playing facilities as well, or playing standards as well, something that maybe they need to look forward. They need to look at moving forward, and whether or not that's going to be a thing. I mean, when it comes to practicing, like when they go to New Orleans next, which I have no idea what the Super Bowl rotation is, but it's always in there, so they'll be there. Then that's an artificial turf. You could sort of excuse that, but when it comes to grass, it seems to be a thing that now we need to make sure that everything is perfect, not just on the game, but as we've seen with the 49ers during the week as well. Moving on to our next subject, and we'll stick with the San Francisco 49ers. And this one comes from Stephen A. Smith, the ESPN personality, who said on First Take this morning, there was a discussion they were having about, who's got the most pressure, or what the game means more for both sides. And he gave the answer that Kyle Shanahan is under the most, or is the biggest story coming into this week, because he needs to prove that he can close the deal. Now, what that's referring to is the fact that Kyle Shanahan has got close to the Super Bowl a couple of times. You know, this, you know, He's been to the conference championship game a couple of times with the San Francisco 49ers, had got to the Super Bowl before the 49ers obviously lost to the Chiefs 4 years earlier, but has never been able to win the Super Bowl. The biggest one is obviously the fact that he was in charge of the Atlanta Falcons, in charge of the offense specifically because he was the offensive coordinator during the 28-3 game against the New England Patriots. Obviously, let that go. Some of the decision making towards the down the stretch, giving the Patriots the opportunity to come back, has seen him coming for a lot of criticism over the years. And until he exercises those ghosts or gets the monkey off his back, then that's going to be a thing that haunts him. So it is understandable. I think it is correct from Stephen A. Smith to say that this is the one thing, or this is the biggest story coming into it, because Kyle Shanahan is regarded as a great offensive mind in the league. Some of the schemes he comes up with and the way he utilizes the players, he has a lot of respect. But what can he get more to get to get more respect? And that's the Super Bowl. It's much in the same way that I like to use this example, but Dan Marino, for instance. Dan Marino got to the Super Bowl once, never got back to it again, got deep into the playoffs and a couple of conference championships, I believe, during his time, but never won a Super Bowl. What does one Super Bowl mean when it comes to comparing Dan Marino up against John Elway, say, or Joe Montana? Because there's always a thing like it isn't necessarily you have to win the same amount of Super Bowls or whatever to be to be considered someone's equal. Like, I'm sure there will be some people who would still have Dan Marino above Peyton Manning, even though Peyton Manning won two. So to giving up with the Mannings. Eli's got two, Peyton's got two. That doesn't necessarily mean they're equal. We know that there's a lot of factors go into it, and a Super Bowl is one of them. So for Kyle Shanahan to have this as the greatest and maybe the greatest offensive coordinator that we've ever seen, what more could you have to, yes, great, but you need a Super Bowl to go with it. So for him, I think this is the biggest story, because we can look at the Chiefs for a minute. What do any of them really sort of need, like in terms of right now? Like, Patrick Mahomes already has two Super Bowls. He already has a league MVP. He's got plenty of years that he can go on to win, that he can go on to win a Super Bowl. Andy Reid, maybe as the greatest coach of all time, but I think you're still looking at him way behind Belichick. So I don't think an extra one adds to his legacy. No one's on the Kansas City Chiefs will have their legacy changed by this win. For Kyle Shanahan, it will, especially if he's able to do it with Brock Purdy, showing a great mind that someone from last pick of the draft is able to do it. Christian McCaffrey will need it for something. Deebo Samuel will want it. George Kittle, if he wants to be put in that Travis Kelce class, he'll want to have it. So there's a lot more legacy questions on the San Francisco 49ers. So maybe Nick Bosa as well wanted to put himself alongside Aaron Donald, say, because then they'll both have a Super Bowl. You get the example. It's all really on the San Francisco 49ers. But the biggest one is on Kyle Shanahan because of what he's done leading up to this and how he hasn't been able to, as I say, finish the job. But now it looks if he does, then what's that going to do to his legacy and how it's going to impact it? Just one can make a huge difference. So Stephen A. Smith, bang on with that. And, I absolutely agree with that. Moving on, we shall go on to Caleb Williams. And this is a story this isn't necessarily a story out of anywhere, but this was planted by ESPN insider Adam Schefter, who noted, in the light of the Washington Commanders hiring Cliff Kingsbury as their offensive coordinator, just an aside, the fact that Eric Bieniemy's been moved on, I think somewhat surprises me. The fact that now looks as if he is going to be out of a job. That's a free reign for anyone. You're going to look around the league. Anyone who filled their offensive coordinator spot, did they jump too early? I look at this as a Steelers fan. Who would I rather have, Arthur Smith or Eric Bieniemy? I'd rather have Eric Bieniemy, but we got Arthur Smith. So he's going to be in the wilderness for a bit. Maybe he'll find a space somewhere. But regardless, Eric Bieniemy's been moved out for Cliff Kingsbury. Now, this is crucial because, as Andy Schefter pointed out, Cliff Kingsbury was on the staff of USC this past season. He's obviously had his time as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, but was on the USC staff this season where Caleb Williams played. And the Washington Commanders currently have the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. Now, we've discussed, and I've discussed what the Chicago Bears are likely to do with the number one pick, but one of the options available for them is to get rid or is to trade that number one pick for a King's ransom so that someone could come and grab Caleb Williams and a thing. And his point was, given the relationship that Cliff Kingsbury has, also mentioned the fact that Caleb Williams grew up in Washington and went to Gonzaga High School. There's a connection there. You can sort of put the links together that the Washington Commanders could make that leap from number two to number one in order to draft Caleb Williams. And it makes sense. Again, this isn't Adam Schefter reporting that in the light of Cliff Kingsbury become the offensive coordinator the Commanders will look to. So I just want to make that absolutely clear. This is just what he is uh, theorizing as a possibility, but I think is quite a good possibility that they move up to number one. And now you have someone in Cliff Kingsbury who could help Caleb Williams adjust to the NFL. Because if you were to go to Chicago Bears, and this is the point I've been making, the Chicago Bears are not a good organization for anyone, any quarterback in the league to come into. They've never had a good quarterback in the NFL, at least in the Super Bowl era. So would someone like Caleb Williams want to go there? Or would he maybe tell the Bears, who will obviously get a good look at him in the number one, to say, look, I don't want to come to you, with there have been reports that could be the case. I don't want to come to you. I want to go to Washington, where I'm from, and where I have someone who can help me adjust to the NFL. It makes sense, and what more could you want for someone like Caleb Williams to come into the league with than someone who worked with you in college, worked with you has worked in the NFL, and has worked with a quarterback who's of a similar sort of size, stature, and ability as Caleb Williams, because Cliff Kingsbury worked with Kyler Murray in Arizona. So the marriage is there, and I think it would be the very smart thing for for the Washington Commanders to do. Go up to number one and get that pick. Now, what they would have to give up, yet to be seen, because they don't necessarily have to give up that much for Chicago just to jump back that one. If the Chicago Bears were looking to trade with someone at 9 or 10 or 15 or whatever, then obviously it's a little bit further back because if you move from 1 to 2, you could still get a very, very good quarterback. In fact, you could even trade to 2 and still be able to trade away a haul of picks. Because if someone's really interested in Drake May, for instance, who I know is one of the players coming out, or Jaden Daniels, another one of the highly rated quarterbacks, you can still make it work. So this seems like, for both sides, it could be a win-win situation. The Commanders get their guy in Caleb Williams, and in Caleb Williams gets a team that he will probably feel he could do well with, and someone who can help him adjust. And Chicago Bears only really move back one spot. Again, no reporting, no source or anything like that. Just a theory from Adam Schefter. But the more you look into it, the more likely you actually think, yes, it's probably the right move for all teams considered. I always said that I felt that the Chicago Bears should trade away the number one pick because I'm a believer in Justin Fields. So, trade it away and get Marvin Harrison if you want a weapon wide receiver or someone on the offensive line to give him protection or whatever. But either way, trade away the pick. Now it looks as if you've got one and you can still trade the pick. And if you want a quarterback, you can get a quarterback. And if you don't want a quarterback, you can get a haul. It's a win-win-win situation for everyone. So I'd certainly go with it if I was the Chicago Bears and the Washington Commanders. I think that's something that we keep an eye on because I think there's some legs to that personally. And speaking of legs, we will wrap this up with Le'Veon Bell, Le'Veon Bell, the one who got away from the Pittsburgh Steelers, as it were, a part of that great offense with Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, the killer bees, as it were. But then, of all that great offensive talent, didn't have the defense to back them up, and so it was always a bit of a shootout, and we lost the big ones, many of them. But Le'Veon Bell says that he wants to come back. He's taken to social media to say he wants to come back to the NFL. And there's only one team he would come back for, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. If I'm being brutally honest, I don't want Le'Veon Bell back. I think there is far too much drama there associated with Le'Veon Bell that it's just not worth it, especially when you consider we've got something good right now with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren as our, 1A, 1B, 1 and 2, however you want to brand the running back situation, rather. We have a good system there. And we have Arthur Smith now as the offensive coordinator who can lean into and develop and get the best out of them. Le'Veon Bell just completely disrupts that. And he would probably want to come in with a high amount of money because he's still relatively young. He's still only 31. He can still, he's no elder statesman. He's no spring chicken, but he's no elder statesman. He can probably still go. And the fact that he's been keeping himself fit with his boxing and stuff, he's probably still a good athlete. But I just don't want to be the team that takes a chance on him. You saw he was not the same when he went elsewhere. When he went to I know the Jets was the first team he went to, and then I've sort of lost track of him because again he just wasn't the same. I believe he went to the Chiefs, and I believe was part of the Ravens as well. Um, but no, I just don't want him. If anyone else wants to take him, go for it. It seems as if he doesn't want to go for anyone. He wants to stay and come back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But if I'm being brilliant, I just do not. I don't want it to happen, and I don't see it being a good fit for anyone involved. I think we've moved on from that era, and it's just, as I say, it's just not worth it. Not worth bringing it again. Le'Veon Bell, if he wants to come back, go for it, but not with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And actually, on the subject of running backs, I did have this down, but I didn't think we'd have time. But it turns out we do have time, so I will go into it. And last week, Ryan Leaf, the former quarterback of the then San Diego Chargers, brought up the point that he felt that Saquon Barkley was going to be at the top of the list for Jim Harbaugh now that he's the head coach of the Chargers, basically saying that they would move away from Austin Eckler and go and grab Saquon Barkley, who's now a free agent after his franchise tag season with the New York Giants. I think that honestly is the perfect. I said Le'Veon Bell was not the perfect fit. This is the perfect fit. I think as you look at what Jim Harbaugh wants, he wants a physical running back. That's what he had when he was successful with the 49ers with Frank Gore. I'm not saying Saquon Barkley is Frank Gore, but there are a lot of similarities there in terms of their playing style and what they could bring to the team and how they could fit into a Jim Harbaugh offense and how Jim Harbaugh has sort of worked his way even away from the NFL in with Michigan. He wants it to be physical and he wants it to be physical and tough. And you need a tough running back, and that would be what they have. It is possible, or it would be possible, or it would be great rather, if they could work out something with Austin Eckler, who's made his thoughts about the Los Angeles Chargers as a franchise very vocal in the past couple of years. Maybe now that Jim Harbaugh's there, he might be, see himself to find a new path, or find a new lease, and maybe give the Chargers another shot. If that works, even better, because then you've got two types of running back. You got your thunder and lightning, as it were, with Barkley and Eckler. I have no idea which one's thunder, which one's lightning in that situation. I think thunder's the tough one, but whatever, we'll go with it. But if you have a duo situation like that, it would be perfect. If Austin Eckler rather decides that he wants to move on, I still think you can get something decent out of Saquon Barkley and just let Eckler go on his way rather. So that is definitely one to keep an eye on. Again, Ryan Leaf not coming with. He did say he spoke to Spanos, who's the owner of the Chargers, that they were sort of maybe hinting to looking at him, but nothing really sort of official yet, or from any sources confirming that the Chargers are going to be looking at Barkley. But if they do decide to go down that path, I think it's a very good fit and something that I was going to say should make the Chargers instant competitors, but I think they're going to be instant competitors anyway, just because of, as I've said before, that's what Jim Harbaugh does. He is competitive straight away wherever he goes. And who knows, it may be him that we're talking about in the Super Bowl week next week. But that is the end of today's session of the Baldwin Sports Media NFL wrap-up. Don't forget, as I've said before, you can like, you can subscribe, you can comment, you can follow. All my links to my social medias are down in the description below. I encourage all forms of debate and interaction. Getting a lot of comments, by the way, on my TikTok, so feel free to go check that out. I got again, even if you don't want to talk to me, talk to the people who are commenting. It's a great way just to broaden your mind and expand and just get more involved. Discussion is a good thing. Just keep it reasonable and keep it smart, as it were. So yeah, thanks very much for tuning in, and with a bit of luck, I shall see you guys tomorrow. So until then, you guys all take care.